everybody, for my simulation I'm going to have my mom do a stand pivot transfer just to kind of mimic a typical motor task that an OT might see in practice, and you can kind of apply it to other motor techniques. So what I'm going to have her do is I'm first going to explain to her what's going to happen, and then I'm going to ask her to repeat it just so she can kind of show that she knows what's going to happen next, and kind of keep an eye out for what's happening from my multisensory approach. Okay, so I'd start off with explaining what's going to happen to my patient, and I'd say, okay, Wendy, so we're going to do what's called a stand pivot transfer today, and what we're going to do is I'm going to rock you on the count of 3. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to stand up together, and we're going to shift, and you're going to sit down, but before you sit down, you want to make sure you reach behind you before you sit down so you can make sure that you're going to be safe, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you explain to me what's going to happen so I make sure you know?
Well, you're going to grab this belt and we're going to rock like 3 times, and on the count of 3 you're going to help me get up, and then I'm going to turn, reach behind me, and feel for the couch before I sit down.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So something else I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of adjust your legs a little bit. Good. And so that way this one, when you stand up, it'll be in the right spot. Okay?
Okay.
So let's start with our rocking. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, pivot, pivot. Good. Now reach behind you. Awesome. Great. Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. During my video, I hope you guys are kind of thinking about what was happening to each sensory system while I was performing a transfer with my mom. To begin, we can talk about auditory, and the contemporary motor learning theory is really big on looking at each sensory system in order to improve motor performance and how to learn a new skill. So for auditory, some tips include to give a brief and clear verbal command that is aligned with the timing of the client's motor act. Another one is to have clients repeat the steps out loud before moving to ensure safety and promote retainment. So I did do that, and I did, provide brief and clear instructions, and I also had my mom repeat the steps out loud to ensure that she knew what was going to happen. And lastly, I wanted to use a soft tone of voice to ensure a smooth movement and focus. Okay, and what was happening from a visual standpoint? Some tips include visual cueing that can help initiate and coordinate movements. And another tip is to have the client visually track in the direction of the movement. So, I was using verbal cues, and, I was touching the couch and tapping her body so she knows, she's visually tracking what is going on during the actual motor movement of her transfer. The last sensory system I want to address is the tactile system. Some tips for this system includes to develop first before auditory and visual systems, and it also helps to build cognitive and emotional experience, which can influence movement. Another one is it is important for clients to feel movements that are coordinated and balanced, and this can help promote success. And lastly, an OT can use touch to guide movement. It's also good to stretch to initiate movement or resist to strengthen movement. So the one that I really focused on here for, teaching my mom how to do a transfer is touch to guide movement. I was touching her legs so she knew what was going to move where. I was touching the couch and having her do it, so she can really learn the motor movement that way. And again, I just wanted you guys to realize that I had my mom perform a transfer, because this kind of easy task that an OT might do often can kind of represent other motor movements that you might want to teach a client in the future. And I also have this grid here to kind of connect that bridge a little bit on how you could use this to many different types of motor movements. So in the whole area is the social context. So you really got to think about what's going on from a social perspective and how that impacts the motor movement. You also want to consider goals and what the client wants to do and what you feel the OT, where this potential client could be. Another really big thing in this theory is providing feedback. This motor learning really suggested that providing feedback can really increase the client's ability to perform. And the last one is you got to look at what really motivates the client. This theory was also big on, client-centered practice, and really, the more the client feels strongly about something, the better that they will perform in a motor movement. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned a little bit about the contemporary motor learning theory and how to apply it to many different motor tasks.